Last week we reviewed F.W. Murnau's The Last Laugh, so this week we're carrying on with the silent theme and we're reviewing Strike by Sergei Eisenstein. A Strike is a 1925 silent film, so it was made a year after The Last Laugh. Some of the innovations that we talked about last week in The Last Laugh are absent from this because it's a Russian film, a German film. They were going on sort of different paths, so I think the where The Last Laugh, they were very much concerned with the internal subjective viewpoints with the POV shots and a lot of camera movement stuff. There isn't any camera movement in Strike because of what's important there is the montage. It's much more storytelling from an objective perspective, though the close-ups still give you that sort of intimacy and stuff. But this is much more literate, I think. Again, I mean, it's split into chapters as well, acts or chapters. So you have that feel to it, and it's much grander, it's much bigger, it's dealing with much bigger ideas. Not that there's anything wrong at all with the smaller, more personal things. I usually prefer that, but I am a big fan of this editing technique because it's the proper montage. It's the proper montage technique. It's not the rocky just something. It's not just there to show that time's passed. Each shot is like a word in a sentence. So every one of them has a meaning. Like in The Last Laugh, how everything did have a meaning there. Where here it's not just simple like that's an establishing shot of a building. There'll be something else in there to further the story and to give you a bit more. And each one of those shots is a sentence, and then those acts are sort of like a full paragraph. I mean, that's how it makes sense in my head. In the other film, they had the motifs of the hierarchy and stuff. And this one, it has other motifs where it'll juxtapose images. So they have there's, again, I've forgotten to go into the plot. I'll go to the plot in a second. But it has the sections where the workers in the factory. The film is called Strike, so you can guess what it's about. It's about a strike in a factory in 1905 in pre-revolutionary Russia. The workers revolted and went on strike, and then you can guess what happens at the end. It's what always happens when the proles try to rise up. It's the same story every time. So they have these people spying on the workers because they can sense that there's ferment brewing, and the way that they identify them is by relating each of the key players with animals. So you have that juxtaposition there, and it's things like that all the way through, where every shot has a meaning. It's not directly apparent, but as it's all put together, you start to pick up because they also use repetition in that way, so you'll understand that is related to that. And it's a much more intelligent way of editing than just like Rocky running up the steps, which is what montage has become for some reason. But there are still some people who use it. Kubrick used it a lot. If you've seen Clockwork Orange, you'll know there's very memorable editing sequences there, like the one of the Jesus with the dancing thing, and there's Ben Wheatley does it a lot recently, which that sort of excites us because I really like that montage type editing, but it doesn't usually fit well with social realism, which is the sort of route that we want to take. But Ben Wheatley showed that you can do that as long as the realism has that feel to it. You can sort of distract from this editing style, which can be a bit flashy. And you can distract from the sort of tension set pieces that are usually at the forefront in thrillers, but that can be put behind the realism. It's like the Safdies, you can do that. But this Eisenstein was sort of the start of these tension pieces, because you can see a lot as the action escalates and there's just more and more chaos. And again, like the camera doesn't always need to move like it did in that, and it doesn't need to move like it does in action films now, because it can move within the frame. And that's what it does in this film. It works very well. As long as it's edited well and there's movement there, the movement increases and increases. Then the tension increases, and then you have these like Hitchcock set pieces, but like this is where they came from in the first place. There's like a guy's running across, he's hanging from the bridge, and it cuts between all these other scenes. Just it draws that tension out, because that's how that works. And I don't want to make out like the shots in this film haven't been put together with love and care, because they clearly have. There's many great shots in this film, and there's many great sequences in this film. The camera is static, and the focus on the storytelling comes from the editing. Strike is about a strike in a factory, as you can tell. I mean, the title's self-explanatory. And it starts with a quote about collectivism, about how we can all pull together and make the world a better place. I sort of agree with this thing, but the fact is that people on the whole are cunts and they'll ruin it. So that's what happens. That's what happens at the end of this film, and it's really brutal. The way it does it, the way that the juxtapositions between the people as animals throughout the film comes together as them being slaughtered, as they are being slaughtered. That is really effective. It's really effective, and it's this film was supposed to be a part of the first part of a trilogy where it might have gone into more, which just makes it even more depressing because the strike is just slaughtered at the end, and then there's no like, well, where do you go from there after, because he never made the other parts. So it's quite grim. It's grim, but it's realistic. Like I said, it's nice. It's nice to listen to Billy brag, but will the world ever be that? Will collectivism ever beat out individualism? I like to think so, but I doubt it. So, strike, if you must.
Now then, if you liked video, then click subscribe. If you didn't like it, well then bug off.
No, don't really subscribe anyway.